The Biggest Loser sold themselves as a show to help obese people change their life. But the real question right now is, do you buy that? Fit for TV, the viral documentary about this show that became a billion-dollar franchise, has another question. What if this show is about all of us? And they are onto something, because eventually all reality television reflects back the very audience that's watching it. Reality television, as a genre and a form of entertainment, has always relied on just enough cruelty to squeeze the goods out for the audience. And there's no getting around that, no matter how noble the premise is. Like, we could look at The Bachelor and go, oh, this is a show celebrating marriage and love and engagement. Cue 30 women competing with each other and trauma dumping and trying to backstab each other to get engaged. On Don't Tell the Bride, the producers generously give £15,000 to a lower class happy couple that just so needs the money to finally have the wedding of their dreams. But there's a catch. The bride isn't allowed to design any of it. On Queen for the Day, which was this landmark OG reality television show that ran from 1945 to 1964, these women were offered a chance to be held up as, look, these are the downtrodden backbone of American families, and we're going to appreciate them today. Oh, after they tell every bad thing that's ever happened to them and embarrass themselves and disclose all sorts of information about their marriages. But here's a refrigerator. The entertainment in reality TV comes from watching a human person be deeply exposed and get increasingly uncomfortable in more and more vulnerable situations. The catch is not the side effect of the show, it's the point. It's the draw for the audience, it's the locus of the drama. It's P.T. Barnum selling you a chance to come look at the freaks. But what saves us, the audience, from the culpability of being entertained by this? How do we distance ourselves from the fact that the humiliation is the point? Well, we turn it into a game. We gamify the humiliation. When something's a game, we're all together on this fun journey to get a really cool prize at the end. The delicious, tantalizing prize comes in the form of this gift of very outsized human resources. Think money, an opportunity, a relationship, something that gives you more social capital in a deeply unjust world. We can let these people endure extraordinary humiliation because they're going to get an extraordinary payout. The prize turns the game into a kind of meritocracy, and it makes it fair. Now we're not just talking about an entertainment product, we're talking about a competition. And we're not talking $250, we're talking $250,000. Even after getting heavily taxed, that kind of money, that's life-changing for people. And the money on The Biggest Loser was substantial even by modern day television standards. That prize amount, it held for 17 seasons, and it still tops what you get on the most lucrative season of Love Island USA Today and the modern version of Bachelor in Paradise when they hand out those little envelopes at the end. One thing people are loving about this documentary is the fact that it doesn't just focus on the people who bulk up one version of the narrative. It talks to a bunch of different people who walked away from the show with very different conclusions. You do get to hear from Olivia Ward, whose family doesn't regret at all her going on the show and said, wow, this changed our life. You can hear from Joelle Gwynn, who sued the show for her experience. We even get to hear a really complicated, nuanced take from Dr. Jen Kearns, who loved her time on the show so much that she actually joined it and then later had different feelings about her involvement in it. And when you're trying to figure out what's the difference between what the show meant to be versus what it has come to mean to us, it's great to hear from the executive producers and co-creators themselves. This documentary managed to snag both David Brooms, who is the executive producer, and JD Roth, who's the co-creator. David talks with near tears in his eyes about the origin story of the show and how he was outside a gym and he saw this desperate ad posted from an obese person saying, I just need someone to help me change my life. David is open that, yeah, he was in TV and he was looking for the next biggest thing. And both he and JD knew that the title, The Biggest Loser, was provocative. Both he and JD share in the documentary that they had this vision together, that they were going to provide struggling Americans with access to resources that typically only celebrities had. The contestants were going to get trainers, a doctor, and most importantly, time. Because this is the sad reality in America, your healthcare is not a given. Many contestants actually resonated with the theme that was marketed to them, and they saw this show as the chance to change their lives. David and JD today are in this peculiar place where they have to both defend the show and also distance themselves from some of its controversies all in the same breath. Contestants had access to things that they hadn't had before, but this never stopped being TV. Every reality show's theme, it's what gets the eyeballs in the first place, but it's not what keeps them there. We didn't watch The Bachelor because we valued marriage. It's because we found mess entertaining. And The Biggest Loser had to do the same thing, which was provide dramatic narrative tension as well as comedy. And they had to produce a narrative that was bigger than the season before. At the time the show aired, 34% of America was considered obese. But you had 100% of a whole society that had grown up haunted by various media versions of shame and blame that surrounded this topic. The theme absolutely connected to millions of Americans. It was not hard for people to look at these different stories and see some of themselves in it. But The Biggest Loser was never designed to be national group therapy. It was designed to be a spectacle. The challenges to move tons of bread with your mouth, they don't make sense. They are great comic material though. Were there real temptations in the real world? Yes, but when you tied them to a deeply competitive, almost mentally manipulative game, it didn't help contestants actually create a mental strategy to move forward with their lives. You might ask, like the contestants are asking today, how did this necessarily help the program? But this is the point that some of the contestants are making today. This wasn't the program. The tools to become healthy, that was a theme. It wasn't the point. And that brings us to the greatest hypocrisy of the show that we, the audience, are complicit in, whether we remember Danny Cahill winning season 1 or not. The filmmakers for this documentary, they cut in various scenes across the 17 seasons. You notice that the editing leans far more to a comedic effect than a triumphant one. Is there a triumphant overcoming edit in some parts of the finale or in some aspects of the episode? Absolutely. They wouldn't be able to keep airing the show for that long if they didn't. But a lot of the time, most of the time, the punchline is the bodies. It's the struggles of the contestants themselves. The Biggest Loser is not the first, nor will it be the last show to use societal shorthand to get you to understand what's going on. As I have said before, when you watch a reality show, you don't really know, unless they're seasoned reality stars, who these people are. These aren't celebrities. They're not playing a game that you're going to play in your backyard when you have friends come over. For one, you don't have that production nor that money to do so. So first off, your brain is not recognizing off the bat what the show is trying to introduce to you. And that is where production leans on types and forms. You watch unknown strangers framed through known stereotypes. What we hear is multiple contestants saying that they realized at some point in the filming over and over again that they were not motivational cast members. They were the joke. If The Biggest Loser wanted to make a show about American triumph and strength and overcoming, they could have done that. They could have leaned into that kind of edit. But this was, again, not a show for fat people. It was an entertainment product for an audience, and an audience that was more likely to stick around if they could laugh and point. The producers couldn't scare or depress their audience, and they didn't want to make this a heavy show per se. So that brings us to the question, who is this show for? The answer lies in who we think we're allowed to make fun of. Fatness in America, it's not seen as a medical question or conversation. It's seen as a moral issue. Fatness is tied to ideas or social conceptions of sloth, idleness, out of control, lack of discipline. And in a country that worships the idea of a pure idealized meritocracy, this is a great sin. You get whatever is coming to you if you don't play the meritocracy correctly. And perhaps if you didn't want people to point and laugh at you, you wouldn't put yourself in this mess. If you didn't want to get screamed at, you should have worked out at home. They say if you didn't want people to look at you, you wouldn't have put the food in your mouth. The American mirage of the pure meritocracy is what researcher Yoonji Kim speaks to. That mirage flattens some of the complications of the circumstances that might lead to your experience or influence your experience. Trauma, injury, health complications, various experiences that have happened to you or were done to you, they're kind of wiped away under this idea of the pure meritocracy and people just working hard. It allows blanket judgment on the fat body. And while yes, Americans do have access to an untold historic access to rich foods that most of the global world is strategically, through our placement of capital, kept from, there is a complicated conversation about what leads somebody to have the bodily experience that they're having. If anything, that should underscore how this is a social question and not just an individual one. It should lead us to more holistic, compassionate conversations with professionals and the people themselves about their experiences. But that kind of social question about hunger and how famine is manufactured and how food deserts exist and how empty calories in certain areas are given to certain socioeconomic communities, that's too complicated for TV. It's not fit for TV, but fat people flailing and failing, that's perfect. This is an experience that is socially acceptable to make fun of, to openly hate or pathologize. And we haven't moved on. You could see how people are pathologizing, moralizing Pilates and thinness. It's one of the sole arenas of control that some people still have in a society that is rapidly consolidating power. So as we dive into the themes and the questions over the next couple days about this show, I would ask us to think, what does 17 successful seasons of this show mean? Not just for the two guys who created it, but the millions of us who made it profitable. This show, however, did not pierce my homeschooling no TV bubble, but it was background noise noise for a lot of you. If you want, let me know what the show meant to you then and what it means to you now. This documentary is in 3 parts on Netflix. Let me know what you think.